Welcome into the Herald Sports Headlines. This is our inaugural podcast. We're hoping to start one up here that will be continuing. We're coming at you live from the Herald conference room. I'm Matt Bove, Herald Sports reporter, along with my partners here at the Herald, Andrew Chudenik and Will Harrigan. Gentlemen, how's it going?
Glad to be here, Matt. Talk some football. We're halfway through the season here in the Herald area. Some surprises, some teams that we thought would bounce back off to good starts as we kind of figured. So it's getting interesting as the playoff push really heats up here.
Yeah, Will. It seems like the cream's sort of starting to rise to the surface. Obviously, the last two seasons we've had, a pair of sectional champs. So, hoping to see that trend continue. And obviously, a lot of storylines at this point in the season, as the teams, the contenders, kind of sort themselves out here in the 2019 season.
Yep, it's been a great run for Sussex County football the last few years, and hopefully it can continue as the playoff push kicks in here. We're going to start off by taking you guys through our top five that we put out weekly. Sparta is number one, as they have been for the last 2 or 3 weeks right now at 4-1. I have not seen Sparta personally yet, so I'll let Will and Andrew take you through them.
Their offense is legit. I saw them up at Roxbury week 2 of the season. They had their first home game under the lights there on September 13th. That was freshman quarterback Austin Fratura's first varsity start, and he was outstanding. 9 for 12, threw for 4 touchdowns, went north of 300 yards. He was dominant. All right, and they blew Roxbury out of the water, who turned around and beat a good Par Hills team 2 weeks later. So that was a good start for the Spartans, who, as Andrew saw last week, took their offense to a higher level against Jefferson.
Yeah, it was really something kind of special last week. Last week against Jefferson, going in kind of thinking it's, that kind of rivalry, that border war. And Jefferson, first the opening kickoff, recover the fumble, have possession there. It seems like, all right, we might be in for a tight one. Sparta goes out, holds them on fourth down, and then proceeds to score on all 7 of their offensive series in the first half and really just run away 49-0. Fratura had over 200 yards passing. Austin Castorina over 200 yards rushing. And it's just a team that seems to be really clicking on all cylinders as they go, 2 road games upcoming here with Vernon and Randolph, but they can really put up points against just about anybody, coming off 103 points in their last 2 games. So really, really impressive what Sparta's been able to do here, midway through the season.
All right, guys, and we'll move on to Lampion Valley at number 2, our only undefeated team in the area, remaining at 5-0. It's been a huge turnaround for them. Obviously, winning only 3 games last year is a rarity in Stanhope. You don't expect that to last, multiple seasons. And with the sophomore class that they had last year, I kind of feel like, Coach Smallwood played them a lot last year, maybe sacrificing a little bit of performance last year, because he knew how special of a group this class could be moving forward the next 2 years to give him a chance at another, getting back to a state championship game. And they look, so far like they have a good chance to, challenge for that. Just a team right now, no one star. They've had a few injuries to start off. Their offensive line, Rocco, their best offensive lineman, has been hurt earlier in the year. Ryan Hall is coming off a torn ACL. Robbie Irwin went out in the Lakeland game when I was there, third week of the year. So their offensive line, which is always the main staple of Lampe's success, was been banged up. So you feel like they haven't even played their best football yet, which is scary. Obviously in their wing T attack, they have multiple options. Nick Molinari's been out, another injury for the last couple of weeks, but he's a big bruiser, and he should be back. Coach Smallwood, when I talked to him in the 3rd game, expect he would be back in a few weeks, so he should be expecting back pretty soon. In his place, Trey Kaplan has been amazing against Lakeland. He ran for about 225 yards, 4 touchdowns, stepped right in. Gavin Coles is a huge threat on the speed plays and the outside sweeps. Great athlete. Drew Tognos, another great athlete. He's gotten carries. JT Lyons, another great athlete, lacrosse player. Both lacrosse players have been getting touches. Their defense has been outstanding as well. So that they're a ball controlling team led by the running game and their defense as they typically are. And moving on from them, we'll go to our number 3 team, which is Sussex Tech, which I don't know if they've ever been in the top 5 since Harrod's been doing it. So this is a huge, this might be their most talented team in the history of the program, standing at 4-1 right now. Will, you saw them a couple of times early. You saw the big win over Hudson Catholic. How big of a surprise was that?
Well, I saw the Mustangs opening weekend against Marist, and frankly, Marist is not a very talented side, and they beat them 52-0. So on one hand, it's like, all right, it is impressive that they were able to score points, bury them early. Bo Maroney scored in all 3 phases of the game, offense, defense, but you kind of weren't sold on them. Then 2 weeks later, they go down to Jersey City. They play at Cave Point. See a Hudson Catholic team who blew them out in their home field last year. Hudson has multiple, Division I, a lot of 1AA level guys in that team. And they went in there and just controlled the game. It didn't feel like an upset. That wing T attack just fooled Hudson all day. Couldn't quite get into a rhythm. Hudson couldn't. And at that point, Sussex Tech, we knew they were legit after then. I mean, granted, they did lose to Morris Catholic a week later, but Morris Catholic went out and beat Pequannock by 20. So they seem to be legitimate as well. And I know, Matt, you saw them in the War on 94 last week, and they looked the part against a decimated Wallkill squad.
Yeah, obviously Wallkill was, we'll get to that later. They've been dealing with a mountain of injuries, but Tech, they scored in every offensive possession that game. They're, Brian, Coach Steinworth is always talking about defensively how they want to fly the ball. They were doing that. They were forcing fumbles. They were forcing turnovers. Austin Durham, had an outstanding game. Both games we saw. I mean, when the kid gets out in the open field, he's tough. He reverse field a couple of times. He's got the speed. He's a legit athlete. So he's a great compliment to Hall inside. It's great last year. The Hall was their workhorse last year, definitely over 1,000 yards. He was getting 20 carries a game, but now they'll be able to spread that out by moving Maroney off quarterback. Now they got Durham, the 3-headed monster. It'll be interesting to see. We'll get to this later. They're still on the bubble for playoff time, so they still probably need to win out to hopefully secure their spot.
At which point it's not even guaranteed, though.
Yeah, it's still not.
Tough.
It's a tough situation, but I think they have the schedule to do it, and they have the talent. Number 4, we have the Kinnatini Cougars, our defending North 1 Group 2 champions, coming off a tough loss last week to Parsippany on a 2-point conversion that failed when they were going for the win. That game, Parsippany is one of the most improved teams in the States, one of the best stories, quite frankly, in the state right now. But Kinnatini started a little slow last year as well before they really got into gear and ended up getting hot, winning that
big
state
one
championship.
this week for Kinnatini too, Matt.
Big one. This is if you win this game at Lampe, get them the first loss of the year, get you right back in the division race, and could potentially
get in the playoffs too.
Get you in the playoffs,
absolutely.
And get them going on the right track like they did last year. Jacob Mafaro has obviously been the workhorse yet again, the reigning Herald Player of the Year. Defensively, they're still a big team up front that's going to want to run the ball a lot.
Yeah, the next 3 weeks are huge for Kinnatini. You look at their next 3 games: Lenape Valley, High Point, and Newton. And even Morris Catholic, that's 4 games right there where can kind of set the tone, kind of similar to what they did last year. But this is a team that's has been kind of feast, not necessarily famine, but in those close games they haven't been able to
explode.
Make the crucial play late. Missed 2-point conversion last week against Parsippany. Obviously a late touchdown in the final minute against Wallkill Valley did them in, and then an interception. They do have, the front line that is kind of special. Obviously Mafaro, the reigning Herald Player of the Year. They do have, the elements of a team that could make a run. Just kind of have to put that all together, with a young quarterback. So it's a team that's kind of, peaks and valleys so far this year. But this next slate of games coming up will be critical to see. Is this a team of contenders? Is this a team that, is going to, be a lower seed in the state tournament, maybe not even make it at all? So it'll be interesting to see over the next few weeks, what type of team this is.
And last at number 5, not last, just number 5, we have Newton. They are making their first appearance in the rankings this year. They are on a 3-game winning streak after starting the year 0-2. This might be the hottest team in the area right now. Coming off the first game against Lampe Valley, Newton's a very young team. Lampe Valley handed it to them. Coach Parzero wanted to, realize that running his same base, wing T offense that he's been running the last few years when he's had so much talent up front and in the backfield wasn't going to be his path to success this year. So he quickly, changed that up. They performed much better against Pequannock, lost in the last-second field goal. And since then, sophomore quarterback Jack Young they've started to implement some more spread concepts out of their wing T. They've given him a lot of run-pass options, and he's been outstanding against High Point. He crushed them with, over 300 yards passing. That game, Newton almost passed as much as they run, which is, something you haven't seen out of any Coach Parzero teams, even the state championship team from a couple of years ago with Luke Young.
And Matt, you think they have a shot to run the table?
Yeah, I was going to be curious as a team that really just entered the fray this past week, kind of turned some heads. What do you see as sort of, that'll be sort of for them moving forward, can sort of make them that contender that they've been the last 2 seasons?
One piece they haven't had this year is Peyton Nolan. Coach Parzero expects him back either this week or next week, which would be huge, because Jack Young is their leading rusher. The Sibley's brothers have been holding down the fort, but no one is a potential game-breaking athlete to add to the offense. And at cornerback, their defense, even against Lampe Valley, their defense was not terrible in that game for their offense doing absolutely nothing. So their defense, they're not a big team. No, they're going to rely on their quarterback, because their quarterback is their most talented player at this point. But that's a good place. I mean, the quarterback can lead you. Obviously, in football, it's the most important position. They have a talented guy there. They have some athletes around them. Their schedule, as Will mentioned, is pretty conducive.
Manageable.
It's manageable. Kittatinny will be should be their toughest game, and they'll want some revenge for the state champion, even though a lot of these kids didn't really play in that game. But they will want revenge for that. If they could win that game, they have a good chance to run the table and once again set themselves up for a playoff run that they've had the last 2 years and reaching the state championship game, winning one of those 2 years ago. And we just mentioned Young as well, a young up-and-comer sophomore quarterback. We have a couple of other ones in the area right now, freshmen at Sparta, Austin Fertora, and sophomore Pierre Della Portis at Pope Johnny, with numerous D1 offers right now. Just an exciting time to have for area football, an exciting time to have when you have
a new infusion of talent here,
You have 3 young quarterbacks that are performing like this. It's how exciting do you think this could be the next few years coming up with this?
Coming off, I was at the Sparta Jefferson game, as we mentioned earlier. And just the poise of Fertura, Austin Fertura was, just something to behold. Obviously a kid that's got a really good head on his shoulders. That's one thing that Coach Frank Marciano mentioned, was just, his personality, how he carries himself was the reason that he felt like he could put a freshman quarterback in there. A kid that obviously is benefiting from, a number of senior weapons, veterans around him at the skill positions, but a guy that seems to be able to kind of step in there, make all the throws, obviously step back, hand off the ball when you have a guy like Austin Castorina running behind you. Obviously that takes a lot of the, the stress off of you. But obviously, as only a freshman, stepped in there, went on the road, was down late against West Morris, and was able to, pull it out and kind of proved what kind of player he could be. And it should be, really excited to see what this kid can do over the next 3 years. A kid that is, kind of, it's the X's and O's for him, here early. Obviously not the biggest kid, but once he, grows a little bit, the mind and, his body, I mean, the sky's the limit kind of for this guy. So excited to see what he can do moving forward.
And, Della Portis at Pope John, obviously they've had a tough year playing the schedule that they play, but obviously the scouts or the recruiters, could see something in him besides for, the wins and losses and the stats and the press at the camps, the football camps that he's been at, and he's gotten, numerous even offers: Kentucky, Boston College, Rutgers, among them.
Yeah, and Matt, I saw them up at MetLife against Iona Prep, who may end up winning all of New York City in the Catholic League this year. And obviously, as a team, they were overmatched. But Del Portis made some next level Saturday afternoon throws in that game. I think he does have that kind of ability going forward. So with him in there, Pope John, as always, is a team to watch going forward. They get the right first round matchup in the state tournament. They could make some noise. So
yeah, I don't know about you, Will. Just watching the film on Del Portis, it seems like he's constantly running for his life, but
yeah, the line's not helping him.
He's able to make some plays happen. Is that kind of what you see? Kind of has the arm talent.
Yeah,
for sure.
and certainly when a play breaks down, he's just as good as when he's in the pocket as well. He's able to flush out, settle in, make a throw on the run, make a throw under pressure. He kind of has to because he's been under pressure often this season. They had a tough weekend, Pope John, lost to Bosco 38-0. But again, a team that I don't think we're done hearing from yet this year.
I think it's interesting, as these kids, these freshmen and sophomore, they're only 14 or 15 years old. And you have to get the respect of kids who are 17, 18 years old.
Oh, yeah.
It's very impressive that they're able to do that to go along with. Obviously, they all have physical talent, but they've been able to get the respect of those juniors and seniors who are a lot older and more mature than they are.
Absolutely. In the case of Young and Futura, not only are they stepping in as freshmen, sophomores, but those teams have high aspirations for what they can do. Especially in the case of Sparta, a team that has so many juniors, seniors that. This is their shot to
this is their time to
make a run, and they have, and the fact that they have the utmost confidence in a guy like Futura, just speaks volumes about what this kid can become moving forward.
I mean, yeah, you want to look at a comparable there, Andrew. Look at Pope John, 2013. There's obviously 2 NFL players in that team. That's a very rare occasion anywhere in high school football, but that was Sonny Abramson's junior year. You need all the pieces around you to make a run because, of course, that senior year for Sonny, 2014, kind of like the last QB protege we had in the area, they lost to Vernon. All right, so you need to make your run when you have all the pieces in place. So Sparta's window really is now to make a run, in my opinion.
All right, to transition a little bit off of that, we want to highlight some potential Player of the Year candidates at the midpoint mark.
A couple good ones here too.
Always a tough race. Jacob Mafaro won it last year. He's in the mix this year, but we have some guys who could definitely challenge him so far. Start with Andrew, one of his top guys here.
All right, and it kind of goes back to what I saw last week. Obviously, Austin Castorina coming off a game with 211 yards and 3 touchdowns. A guy that really just kind of sets up that offense. Run first. And just the vision that I saw last week was really something. A guy that just really follows his blocks, is so patient running, and then as soon as he's downhill, he makes one cut and he's gone. A guy that kind of sets the tone for that offense. 200-yard games, 2 more 100-yard games, I should say. One against Roxbury and one against Mendham. Really didn't have to do much in either one of those games, but still went over 100 yards. A guy that's going to be, critical for that team to, maybe make a run at the sectional final. Maybe meet up against Ramapo again. Just a guy that has D1 aspirations. That kind of fuels him. The fact that not many teams have looked at him in the D1 level just because of his size. A guy that's only around 5'10", but a guy that just the vision and the speed and the way he can cut and just take the ball the distance on any given carry. That's kind of what stands out to me. And a guy that no matter what the competition is on the other side, a guy that's really going to set that team up for success.
Also had the game-winning touchdown against West Morris, and that whole drive, from what I heard, he pretty much got the ball every play of that drive, and not surprising in that moment that Coach Marciano would want to go
ride with the senior horse there.
Yep.
And Matt, you mentioned that game-winning drive. You want to talk about another guy who comes up in big spots. That's Bo Maroney from Sussex Tech. You and I have both seen the kid this year, and frankly, he's just been a jack of all trades. And they moved him from quarterback to running back this year. And even though he's, in theory, seeing the ball less in his hands, he's having as big a year as anybody in the area.
Yeah,
and Brian Stellingworth is using him the right way.
Normally, in high school, the best athletes quarterback just to get the ball in the hands the most. But Sussex Tech's got three, great athletes, and this transition for him has worked out outstanding. He has 571 rushing yards and 50 carries this year, 8 touchdowns, defense, 24 tackles, a pick 6 in the first week against Marist. Not to mention their kicker, very accurate. He's got a nice leg, 21 at 23 on extra points. The kid's just a football player. He's a leader. From
Absolutely.
Talking to him last week, you could tell he's the vocal leader on that team for sure.
And Matt, experience. He's one of 5 or 6 guys in that core who have been 4-year starters.
Freshman year, he was there, yep.
Freshman year, he was starting. So he's a guy who's played a lot of football. That whole group has. And it's starting to show itself on the field now. On paper, this might be the most talented Sussex team tech. In fact, I'll amend that. It probably is the most talented Sussex tech team they've ever had. There are 2 or 3 guys, that could play Division III football on the next level. That's not something you often say about Sussex Tech. It's been a magical season over there.
Right, and one other, surprise or team that has improved has been Vernon. They have a receiver who's been putting up some stat lines that just, kind of blow your mind. So we'll talk to us a little bit about Aiden Moskowitz.
I'll tell you, fellas, it's a fun time watching Vernon play ball, all right? Defensively, they have their issues right now, but, Steve now is a Paramus guy, and he brings that Bergen County spread offense up to Vernon. They do a lot of 5, 6, 7 yard, passing type plays. Zach Washik, their quarterback, is very accurate inside 10 yards. They get the ball in Moskowitz's hand. They do a good job. They get the ball in their best players' hands and let him go to work. And they do. He's a shifty kid who makes kids miss. Every week he seems to go over 200 yards receiving. He's just a stat machine. He's tough to tackle. And he's only a junior. So Vernon's upswing is not coincidental with Aiden Moskowitz having the ball in his hands.
Just a question with having not seen them yet. What makes this off? Because this offense is not the problem there at Vernon at all. What has made them go so far? Obviously, with Moskowitz kind of leading the charge.
Yeah, look, any football team that is struggling, usually the common denominator is they can't score points. That's the first hurdle you have to clear. Vernon doesn't have that problem anymore. They're scoring in the 20s, in the 30s every week. I saw them against Hackettstown. They scored 36. They spread you out. They have a kid named Colin Andriola as their fullback who comes in, seems to go north of 100 yards every week as well. Tough runner, gritty, old school type kid. They spread the ball out though as well. They give the ball to Moskowitz, and when he has the ball in his hands, he's electric. As I said, Washik is very, very accurate inside 10 yards. If he ever can develop a little bit of a run game himself where they can kind of spread the field and have the quarterback draw up the middle, their offense will even take it to another level. Defensively is where they need to work on, but things are getting better up in Vernon.
What's scary about the Vikings is Washtek's a junior, Moskowitz is a junior, and then John Kowalski, who was one of their most talented offensive players last year, a sophomore, went down with an injury. So, the future's bright, in my opinion, with Vernon.
I would take it a step further, Andrew. I'll even go as far as to say next year, playoffs should be the expectation up in Vernon, without a doubt, with that team they're going to have up there.
Common sense would dictate, they're playing a lot of the same athletes on offense that they are on defense. So you obviously got the athleticism, the talent. So whoever's missing on defense, the talent you figure should be there based on what they're doing on offense. So maybe it's something schematically that they want to fix, or maybe it's in the trenches. But you figure by next year their defense they don't got to improve that much, just a little bit, and they'll
start winning some games here.
Yeah, what resonated with me about Vernon, obviously, kind of. They're kind of the upstart, I guess, this year that kind of really raised some eyebrows, which is speaking with Coach Down early in the season. He took the parents, they had a meeting, and he's like, listen, we want to be where the other Group 3 teams are. And if that's not the expectation, if we're not going to be, that Ramapo, that Riverdale, if we're not going to be able to compete with those teams, we shouldn't even be out here. So just the expectation, what Down has put in place has been really impressive. And, you obviously only one win so far. But you see, what is kind of in store for this program moving forward, and a lot of things to like about what Vernon has done so far this year.
And you can see light at the end of the tunnel. I see a winnable game coming up in a few weeks. Up at Mendham, a game. We might want to get a second look at the Vikings. I think a very winnable game at home for them. And I really do think next year, with many, successful coaches, year 3 is that breakout year, and next year will be year 3 for Coach Down. And I really do think that has a playoff potential up there in Vernon next year. I really do.
It makes sense that Coach Down would come in with those expectations, being that he came from a Newton team that was coming off a state championship, and he was there to see the turnaround from a program like Newton that was like Vernon, a bottom feeder program for a few years, and Coach Barzero turned that around, and Steve Down was there to witness that, and so you figure he's a good candidate to turn Vernon around, and he's certainly been doing that so far. One other big storyline that should be mentioned, Wallkill Valley coming in the year was a team with a state championship as the goal, and there was a reachable goal for them coming off one game short of getting to the North 1 Group 1 sectional final last year. They got off to the start you would expect. They had a huge comeback against Kittatinny, huge comeback against Kinnelon. They were undefeated, and then obviously Alex Mastrioni goes out against Parsippany, won the first few plays of the game with a meniscus injury. He'll be out for the year. If it was just him that was out, you figure with their defense that they would still be able to compete. Their defense was one of the best in the area last year, led by Ryan Nugent at linebacker along with Cole Weekly. But Nugent broke his arm against Kittatinny. They've had a number of other injuries. Just being on their sidelines last week, it was like a mass unit with 3 or 4 kids on crutches, a couple of arm slings, and a cast on his arm, on Nugent's arm. I mean, it's crazy. And they lost in that game against Sussex Tech. Tommy Testino, their second quarterback, got hurt. Oof. He was on crutches, so I didn't actually see what play he got hurt on, but in that game, they were down their third quarterback that game. It's a real shame what happened to Bobby Leach's team.
And Matt, to add on that point, when you lose one kid on the Group 1 level, it can be catastrophic. Losing 5 or 6 just completely alters the course of your season. Like you said,
I think it was either 5 or 6 before the Sussex Tech game. They had more during that game.
It's brutal.
Obviously, this is a team that, I looked at, week 3, coming in with, kind of an all-world guy that you couldn't take down, guy that was so tough between tackles, and Al Mastriani. When you start with a quarterback like that, and you have a running game with Ben Mazeski, obviously the defense was strong, up front. A team that really seemed like it could contend for, that North 1 Group 1 title. And then to see it all unravel in the span of, maybe 2 weeks, it's kind of disappointing. A team that I would have told you if we had picked, maybe 3 weeks ago who was the top team to contend for a sectional final or sectional title, it would have been Wallkill Valley. But now, it doesn't really look like that's going to happen with as many injuries that have occurred over the last few weeks.
Yeah, just a shame. And, as we get in towards the playoff push here, it's going to be really close with some of these teams of whether they're going to qualify or not, whether they're going to be home or not in the first round. It's going to be a very, very, very interesting race to watch here in the coming days.
And now we just wanted to take you guys through where we stand in the United Power Rankings playoff system. This year they're going to a seeding, they'll do 1 through 16 and then make up the sections, on the snake seeding.
New OSI is harder to figure out than calculus, Matt.
Yeah, it's people are, it'll be interesting. Hopefully it produces better results than it did last year. That's the idea.
Absolutely. Team like Sussex Tech last year getting snubbed despite 6 wins.
But it could happen again.
We'll see.
We'll get to that in a little bit. In North Group 3, we have Sparta 6th right now. Jefferson not too far behind at 8th. North Group 2, Lampe Valley would currently be our highest seed. They're number 4 in that, which means they would be a 2 seed in one of the sections. And Newton's 13th, so they are a little comfortably in right now. Sussex Tech would be the last seed if the playoffs started today at 16. Kittatinny would just be on the outside at 17. High Point still trying to hang around at 20th. And then North 1, Group 1, we have Wallkill Valley currently at 7th.
Yeah, and Matt, if you are a Sussex Tech football fan, you are rooting like heck for Lenape Valley to beat Kittatinny this week, because a Kittatinny win there could bump them up a few spots, and that could really put Tech on the outside looking in. And what a shame it would be if Tech goes 8-1.
Kinnelon's right above Tech, and they only have 1 win, so if you figure Tech might be able to pass them if Kinnelon keeps losing. So we'll transition now until a couple of questions for everybody, some predictions here as the end of the year is quickly creeping upon us. It's amazing. It feels like it just started in September, not too long ago.
Crazy.
All right, gentlemen. First one we have here is our best shot to win a sectional title, and will any of them, come through?
I think Lenape Valley is our best shot to win a section, title this year, because I don't think North 2 is particularly loaded. I mean, you have Lincoln is in Central Jersey, typical Jersey City power. It's given a lot of suburban teams trouble over the years. Group 2 down in South Jersey is stacked. Here in the North, I think it's navigable. I like Sparta, but until I get over that Ramapo hump, I just can't pull the trigger on the Spartans, sadly.
I'll go with Sparta.
Oh,
just
okay.
Saying that the talent seems to be there for them to make a run. Very senior leading group. A team that pushed Ramapo last year in the state tournament.
True.
If they get home field for the first 2 rounds, once you get into a sectional final, anything can happen.
Sure.
I feel like the skill guys, that front line for Sparta is really strong. A defense, with a ton of ball hawks on that side of the ball. So I'll go with Sparta in an upset over Ramapo.
And I have to go with Will here with Lenape Valley. What stuck out to me over the last 2 years in the with Newton winning and then with Kittatinny winning has been the Bergen teams in that section have not been as Westwood was a really dominant team in that section.
Not last year,
and then they were a very good team the year before when Newton really took it to them in that game. They dominated. Team like those Bergen teams just haven't been as good lately. High Point crushed I think it was Mawa last year in the state tournament.
Kittatinny crushed Mawa.
Kittatinny crushed Mawa. And High Point also had a big win in Bergen County.
Over Ramsey.
Ramsey.
Yeah.
So, the Sussex teams have had success there, and Lenape Valley, with the talent they have, should be able to make a good run. And
Smolin we trust.
Smolin we trust.
He's certainly been there before. All right, moving on. Do you guys think Sussex Tech will make the state tournament?
It's going to be close, but I think the Texters are going to sneak in. But if they want to do themselves any favors, they're going to have to run the table here. One slip up, and it's probably a death knell for Tech. Unfortunately, with their schedule and the way the UPR system works, it's going to take an 8-1 effort to get them in the state tournament. And Brian Stellingworth knew that going in, to his credit. He said before the season there was a critical 3-game stretch of Hudson Catholic, Morris Catholic, and over here, and Wallkill Valley they needed to win. They got 2 out of 3. All right. Will it be enough? It's going to be close, but I think they sneak in.
I will also say yes, and that is a dangerous 8 seed that probably no one wants to see. With seniors that have been waiting for their moment and that have proven that they're not scared with just about anyone on the other side. A team that went down to Jersey City, nothing to lose really, and took down Hudson Catholic. I will say yes, and the Mustangs are a team to watch.
I mean, if they win out and they don't, then the system wasn't really fixed. I mean, last year you could debate it. They were 6-3. They had some close wins over some teams that
gave up a big lead to Morris Catholic, which kind of killed them.
They kind of snuck by North Warren and Opaca last year. But this year is a different story. They've been dominant. They're clearly
They deserve it.
They deserve it. They have the talent. They have the talent. They're a talented team enough to make the state tournament. And obviously, only losing one. If they do only lose one game, they would have deserved it on the field as well. And next one up for you guys, will Lenape Valley, our only undefeated team left, make it a complete undefeated regular season?
I'm going to say yes. I think their schedule, the way it's set up right now, they've had their tougher games that have gone by here. They beat Newton on opening night. Matt, you were there. It was a big win for them. I mean, Madison's having a little bit of a down year. Obviously, Wallkill is banged up. So I think if they can get by Kittatinny this Saturday on the road, I think it's 9-0 for the Patriots.
Yeah, this is a tough one because it's very hard to run the table, no matter how good of a team you are.
And going to High Point's tricky on a Friday night, week 9.
I'm gonna say the Pats slip up in one of these road tests.
Think this Saturday is their best shot at that, Tread?
It could be either Kittatinny or High Point. I'm not saying which one it'll be, but I think it'll be one of those. It's just so hard to run the table in high school football, especially, with these area rivalries. Teams are going to be, juiced to play the Patriots. Lenape Valley, a team with, that's kind of growing and, obviously have kind of dominated over the last few stretches. Caught Newton first game of the season. I think Kittatinny is going to really test them with, what they have up front, with Mafaro running up the middle. Just because it's so hard to run the table, I'll say they do not finish 9-0.
Yeah, a couple interesting games coming up. Obviously, you guys talked about Kittatinny. The Madison game is interesting just because, Madison's been down the last couple of years, but they used to have going, obviously, they played in the state
rivalry.
They had a little thing going there.
And then every year they were competing in that North 2, Group 2. And then in the regular season, they played a lot, too, so they've been familiar with each other. I'll say they do. They're getting healthier. They're playing. I think they'll continue to play their best football down the stretch here of the season. You mentioned High Point could be a tough game.
It's a tough place to win.
High Point, if High Point's still alive, they'll need they would need that game. And High Point's kind of been a team that lost a lot. They've hung in pretty well this year for the amount of kids that they graduated off of last year's team. All right, guys. Next we have which player will win the scoring race in the area.
Looks like it's a race between Maroney and Castorina right now, but I like Maroney because he kicks extra points, seems to score 2 touchdowns a game. Go with Bo Maroney here.
I'll go with Castorina for all the reasons mentioned earlier about why he should or could be player of the year.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I mean, just based upon Maroney sharing a backfield with 2 other guys, even though his schedule is easier down the stretch. Castorina, they have the passing game with Futuro obviously, but he's the only guy getting carries in the backfield. So just based on that, you would give him the best odds. And going down the stretch, Sparta has some tough games. Morris Hills, Montville, they're going to need him. They'll be riding him.
True.
So it seems like he would be a good bet there.
Castorina is also a guy that's going to punch it in from 2 yards out. You don't really know who's going to get the ball.
Hall could. Durham's not really a guy who's going to do that. Maroney and Hall
it's going to be Maroney and Hall.
They'll split those short yards. It was Hall last year got 2 short yardage touchdowns for Tech. And our final one here, gentlemen, Pope John makes some noise. They automatically, I just forgot to mention that when we went down on PowerPoints, Pope John automatically qualifies to seats determined based on the selection committee in the non-public Group 3. So what do you think about Pope John's chances in the state tournament?
Yeah, Matt, it depends on the matchup. I mean, obviously, Matt or Die seems to be a top 5, top 6 team in the state. Pope John right now is 1-4. They have a very winnable game at Del Barton this coming Saturday in Bergen Catholic St. Peter's Prep. So even if Pope John is, let's say, 1-8 or 2-7 going to the state tournament, they're going to be tested, right? And we've heard all this talk about Donovan Catholic winning all these games, beating Linden by 3 or 4 scores, beating small schools at the shore by 50. At the end of the day, they're not tested like Pope John is. That's the truth. So depending on who the seeding committee gives the Lions, if it's Donovan Catholic or if it's really anybody but DePaul or Matt or Die, I absolutely think the Lions can win a state game. Without a doubt, even with their record. They'll be ready to go.
I'll agree with that one. Obviously, like Will mentioned, just the test that, Carlson kind of rolls out each year. A team that put up, 28 points against DePaul, a team that was almost in the game really in the first half. A team that will be, kind of hitting its stride, has some young guys, some skill guys. Those reps against those big teams will sort of work wonders for those guys as they head into the state tournament. Some big games coming up. Obviously, Bergen Catholic at home will be interesting. St. Peter's Prep. And Seton Hall Prep. I mean, the schedule's loaded. This team will be tested. If they play one of those South Jersey teams, it's anyone's gamble whether or not they can kind of, shock some people there.
The South Jersey teams always like to, play up that they could,
pump themselves up, and then what happens?
Well, there's some exceptions. Last year, the mayor, that was,
DePaul did get upset by Matters Eye, but if you guys look just last year, Pope John went down to St. John Vianney, kind of been a hot program the last 4 or 5 years, goes down the shore, goes to Homedale, wins by 3 touchdowns. Yeah. So who's to say with the right draw it can't happen again? But if the seeding committee gives them DePaul in the first round, it's not a draw you want.
No. But usually, the committee does recognize, obviously the league that Pope John plays in, the competition that they're playing against. They had 1 win last year. They already have it this year. I think they beat Seton Hall Prep last year. Seton Hall Prep is improved this year, but if the Pope John could win that game,
They're
And
looking
they'll,
good.
They'll have 2 wins under their belt, and they'll see the Barton has played well. They almost, I think they almost beat DePaul, or they did beat DePaul. So the Barton is a tough game coming up. So tougher than they have been. The Barton did beat them last year as well, but the Barton, I guess, is on the rise. But Pope John, their key is, Portis could get hot. When you have a Division I quarterback, you always have a chance. If he could get hot and hit on some deep passes, they could definitely
Anything can happen.
Anything can happen. All right, guys, thanks to you for tuning in to our first our inaugural podcast here. We hope to bring you guys some more of this as the season goes on.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. It's been a blast.
Take care.